Welcome to lesson 7 of our Dreamweaver unit. In this unit, we're going to take a look at some other selectors that we can use in Dreamweaver and CSS. Where we left off with learning how to do our index boxes. We learned a lot about floats and how to handle those, as well as our margins. But today we're going to take a minute and step back and look at another type of selector that we can use in CSS. The only type of selector we've been using so far has been an ID selector or an identifier. These are, you can tell which ones these are because they have a hashtag before the name. That's what makes them a identifier. If you look over here on our CSS designer, you'll see that we have a section completely dedicated to our selectors. And we only have ones now that have hashtags before them. That means we only have identifiers or ID selectors. The new one that we're going to look at, the new selector we're going to look at, is called a class selector. Now, Mr. Jones, what's the difference between an identifier and a class? There's really only one major difference. An ID selector, which we've been using, can only be used or should only be used on one element alone, just one type of element. Okay. For instance, when I say element, we've got our wrapper here, or let's say our header, okay, our header identifier. We go to our source code. Our header identifier is used for
Keelan Ryder to the front office. Keelan Ryder to the front office.
Keelan. Okay, so our header identifier is used only for our header div. Sorry, got a little tripped up there. It will not be used for any other div. A good example of this also is with our index boxes. I could come down here technically and change all these to index box 1s. Since they all four have the exact same properties, nothing would change to my eye. Okay, but as you can see down here, we're getting some errors. It's going to tell me, hey, we've redefined this. We've tried to put this in there more than once. But you're not supposed to put identifiers in there more than one time or use them more than one time. For us, doing HTML, doing CSS, and little stuff like that, it's not that big of a deal to us. We're not going to see a major change. But if later we were to get into, say, some JavaScript, it would be a problem. I'm not going to go into more in depth into that right now because I don't want to blow your minds. But just know that ID selectors you use with one type of element. For our case, one div. For a class selector, you can use it for many elements. You can reuse it over and over again. Now, I'm going to give you a great example of that. I'm going to have you guys follow me along with this. Wouldn't it be great if we could come down here in our CSS styles and not have so much dedicated to these index boxes? What if we could take all four of these index boxes and convert them into one single class selector? Okay, now follow me here. This is really simple. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this index box 1 and I'm going to right click and duplicate it. So all I'm going to do is straight up copy it. And there we go. It pops right in and says, hey, do you want to rename this? Yes, we want to rename it, because we're going to change it into a class selector instead of an ID selector. Now, ID selectors have hashtags before them. Class selectors have a period before them. So we're going to put period. We're going to keep it as an index box. It's going to be index box class selector. Okay? Click off there, and you can see that it shows up in my code. And the only thing that's different about it is that period right there. Okay, technically I could have just come in and changed that hashtag right here to a period, and that had done that whole job for me. But I wanted you to see me add it over here in the CSS designer. And so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to go ahead and take out these four ID selectors that we had before, this index box 1, 2, 3, 4. You can take it out here by just cutting it out, or you can go here in your CSS designer, highlight them and hit the delete key on the keyboard, and that'll do the same thing. Be careful, don't delete something that you need. Number 3 is gone and number 4 is gone. And as you can see, that really cleans up our style sheet. Okay, it leaves us a lot more space here. Cleans it up a lot for us. But if you'll notice, here's what happened on my page. Those index boxes are gone. Okay, that's because in my source code, I'm referencing index box 1 ID selector. I got rid of those. I now have a single class selector. So here's all that we need to do here. Change this ID tag, or attribute, sorry. Change that ID to a class. Okay, so now you're probably going, well, what happened? We changed it to class. Why isn't it showing up? Well, check out our name over here. It's index box. We left index box 1. So we're going to take that 1 out, and hopefully, if Mr. Jones is on his game today, they'll show up. Bam! Look at there. And we're only using one type of selector, just the index box. No index box 1, 2, 3, 4, all that mess. Get rid of it. We'll use one class and use it several times. And notice we're not getting an error here. Okay, that's pretty much it. That explains in full detail the main difference between an ID selector and a class selector. ID selectors can be used only one time. Class selectors can be used more than once. In our next video, we're going to take a look at how to add text and how to format that text. Class selectors are going to be really important when coming to formatting text, because we'll have text in several places. We might want to give them the same class style on several one of them, right? So if we put some text up in our body, we might want it to have the same type of style as, say, the text in our sidebar. Well, if we want to do a selector more than once, it's got to be a class. So with text, we're going to start using class selectors instead of ID selectors. So stay tuned for that.